After investigating Olive Spectre, I was curious about her son Nervous Subject. With a name like that, you would expect this poor boy to be a subject of some sort of demented game. And he was. His adoptive parents seemed to be up to something. There's a lot to unpack with this one. After leaving Olive Spectre's house, I slept at the community center. I didn't know where else to sleep. At this point, I didn't know what else to do. I was half expecting to wake up at home or maybe in the presence of the Grim Reaper. Alas, when I woke up, I was still stuck here in Strangetown. Well, if there's nothing better to do, I might as well answer some of the questions from the previous day. Like, what the heck is up with Olive Spectre's son, Nervous Subject, and his adoptive parents? I was curious about their situation, and there was nowhere better to begin my investigation than talking to Pascal Curious about it. Previously, during our conversation, he told me where he lived. Would it be weird if I went up to their door to ask questions about his friend? I certainly hope not. His home was very odd looking. It had a lot of open stairs that went out to different platforms with a telescope near the top. Like I said, very odd. Thankfully, Pascal was actually outside when I got there. He saw me and approached me. We made some small talk about the weather before he asked me why I was there. I told him I wanted to talk about Nervous Subject. He was intrigued and let me inside his house. He showed off the house a little bit. On the tour, I saw his son, the alien hybrid baby he talked about earlier, and his two brothers. We finally ended up in the kitchen, chatting about life in general. I asked him about his friendship with Nervous Subject and what he knows about Nervous's home life and situation. Apparently, they met when they were younger. Nervous knows his biological mother is Olive Spectre, but he was removed from her care as a toddler and was adopted by the Beakers sometime throughout his childhood. Pascal always wondered what experiments the highly secretive and less than neighborly Loki and Cersei Beaker were performing on poor Nervous Subject. Why does it seem like his only hobbies include twitching and blinking a lot? How does he deal with the fact that his biological mother, who neglected him so severely that he had to be removed from her household, lives very close to him? I sighed. Life was strange. Things happen, sometimes without any reason or rhyme, and we all have to just deal with it. That's exactly what's happening with poor Nervous Subject. He's just dealing with the hand that he's been dealt. I think it was time to go straight to the source. There's only so much you can learn about someone without directly talking to them. It was time to visit Nervous Subject. The tricky thing about this was I really didn't want to interact with Loki or Cersei. They don't seem like the best people around, and I fear I wouldn't be able to actually chat with Nervous if they knew about my presence. Plus, my encounter with Loki the other day wasn't the most pleasant thing in the world. I came to the conclusion that I would have to wait until they both went off to work or something. If they just left the house, that'd be fine. It was probably the best bet. I waited and waited and waited. Finally, both of the Beakers were gone. I was ready to talk with Nervous. Oddly enough, Nervous came out of the house as I approached it. I was sort of surprised by that. I kind of assumed he didn't have a ton of freedom, but clearly he could walk in and out of the house at his leisure. I said hello to him and introduced myself. He was quite shy, but was willing to talk to me. He described himself as a erratic, paranoid loner who wanted to have a family of his own and wanted to be a friend to the animals. His love for cats and dogs ran deep and he enjoyed their company. I have to say, he was a unique looking sim. I asked him about his hair and he talked about how sometimes he'll dye it red or green, you know, just for fun. After this initial conversation, we headed inside. The house on the outside was interesting. However, the interior of the house was very odd. There was this castle vibe to it all, okay? Oh, and I forgot to mention that next to the house was a huge crater with a crashed UFO in the center. I couldn't help but to think about Strangerville and how similar this town is to that one. They're both desert towns centered around aliens with secretive townspeople and odd things happening throughout. Anywho, going back to their house, inside was, well, it was clear as day what was happening here. Nervous Subject was obviously living here as a test subject for his adoptive parents. He showed me his room, which was down below in an open space in the center of the house. On the main floor close to his room, it was, quite frankly, a lab. It was a lab space. There were all sorts of machines to run experiments. It was a strange and spooky house. I didn't feel great inside of it. I asked him what he remembers about his biological family and his life before the Beakers. He didn't know what to say. His biological parents sort of broke up and his father wasn't really around. In fact, sometimes he felt like he was only created so his biological mother would have something to remember his father by. He was neglected as a toddler and didn't learn many skills at all. His memories kind of get blurry around this time when he was removed from his mother's care. Either way, he ended up here with the Beakers in Strangetown. My heart broke for this young man. He's been through so much. I couldn't help but to wonder how his life would have played out if Olive was a better parent. If he was never removed from her care. What would his name be? It wouldn't have been Nervous Subject, right? Maybe it would have been something like Oscar Spectre. Who knows? My heart breaks hearing things like this. Sims growing up without a proper parental figure. I guess I'm fortunate that despite the fact that my mother wasn't there, I still had my father and my siblings. At last, I asked Nervous about his adoptive parents, Loki and Cersei. He sadly explained that his life with them has been very difficult. He acts as a test subject for them, specifically for Loki. He's always wondered why. Why did he deserve to be subjected to these horrible tests? Then he realized it wasn't because of him or his personality or because Loki hated him. They sought him out. They needed him for their project G8IM, a scientific study on Nervous's genetic composition due to his father. The Beakers made it very clear to him that he wasn't their child, he wasn't a part of their family tree, and they had no relations. Despite this, he had a reasonably good relationship with Cersei. Loki was the one in charge of all the experiments, and Cersei didn't exactly participate in them. Cersei was a medical intern hoping to get a big promotion. She also knew 238 different ways to make someone scream, and none of them are nice. She enjoys taxidermy and collecting coat hangers. Odd. Cersei had told Nervous that she's secretly jealous of her husband's independence and distinction, plus she hates his cooking. Nervous alluded to the fact that Cersei might be having an affair with a doctor, but he wasn't too sure about that. Loki was actually very similar to Cersei personality-wise, except he was more outgoing and less active. According to Nervous, he's talked about genetically engineering a few real kids for their family, and he enjoys spending his leisure time trying to assemble a nuclear reactor out of common household items. He talks about his latest invention like it'll be the thing that gains him the recognition that he knows he deserves. Nervous looked sad talking about his family situation. I don't blame him. It seemed like he was in a horrible situation and just bounced from bad family to an even worse family. He concluded that all he wanted in life was a family. He wanted a partner that he could love and hug and flirt with. I asked him why he's never left. Why can't he leave this world and find a new beginning? He explained to me that it's not that simple. If he left Strangetown for a brand new world, he would lose everything. His memories, his relationships, his skills, everything. He would be leaving behind his biological mother, cousin, and his only friend. He would never get the chance to show Loki and Cersei his worth as a person and not as a Nervous test subject. All of a sudden, Nervous realized the time and told me I had to leave. It wouldn't be good if I got caught, so I left him behind. As I was walking, I realized something. Back in my world, there is a scary story based on someone called the Nervous Subject. Nervous's life, as he told it, was the exact storyline. There is something off about this. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something wasn't right.
Surinado.
Elfonsa Esenor. Oops.